Hey guys, and welcome back to Hoosier Hardware, and today we're taking one more look at the AMD R9 Nano, sometimes called the R9 Fury Nano, though that's probably technically not correct, just the R9 Nano. But regardless, this is a tiny card from 2015 that originally retailed for something like $650. It was a very premium card, and it was really geared toward the emerging ITX market of the DIY sort of space. So we're going to take a look at this card and see if it still holds up here in 2021 and really answer the question whether it's still a viable card for those of you that may still have one of these or maybe even looking to buy one of these. So stay tuned right after the little intro splash screen break. Now, I don't have a ton of GPUs laying around anymore. This is one of them. I actually put a poll on my YouTube community page as well as Twitter to see what card you guys wanted me to take a look at, and the R9 Nano won narrowly. It actually, I think, tied for the win on Twitter, but on the YouTube community page, it did win. And if you did miss that post, that's probably because you're not subscribed. Go ahead and hit that subscribe and like button down below so you can actually, engage in things like polls when I ask you what you want me to take a look at. So regardless, I sort of already mentioned it. This card is now just over 6 years old, came out in August of 2015 for an MSRP of $650. I don't really know how many of these cards were sold at that price, but that was at least the face value of these cards when they first launched. Now, here in 2021, this card actually gives us a few different issues that I want to tackle before I look at any gameplay. The first one is driver support actually ended for this card this past summer, or rather, I guess this summer because it's still currently summer, but regardless, driver support has just ended for this card. So moving forward, you're not going to see any driver updates that are giving it better compatibility with future games or possibly patching any sort of issues that may actually already exist with the card. We're basically now with a fixed state driver. Now, for those of you out there that actually just like to play a lot of retro games or just games that have been out for a while and aren't really looking to play anything brand new, then that's really not a big deal. The problem is in 2021, multiplayer games are just huge, and as those games are constantly updated, ideally you would like to see your drivers for your GPUs also be updated. Now, it's not likely to cause any huge game-breaking problems, at least right now, but just understand that it could cause some issues, and if it does, unless the developer of the game gives you a fix, you're just stuck with whatever problems the lack of driver support gives you. The other major issue with the R9 Nano right now, and this really only applies to those of you out there that actually don't own one of these GPUs, is that it's really expensive. Just like pretty much everything out there, this 6-year-old graphics card is going off for around $300, sometimes slightly less than that, and quite often a little bit more than that right now on eBay. And supply has always been really constrained with these R9 Nanos to begin with because there just wasn't that many to begin with. So what ones are out there are likely to cost you about $300, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So that makes it a really challenging card to recommend when it doesn't have driver support, at least not ongoing driver support, and it's still quite expensive regardless. And just to throw in one more problem with the lack of ongoing support from AMD is the fact that not many of these are out in the wild, which also means that community support from whether it be just people that are out there on the forums trying to help others out with any sort of issues with replicating, maybe game-breaking issues you may be having, there's just not many people out there with this card to actually help you work through any of those issues. So that's just one more nail in the coffin of the R9 Nano. And anecdotally, this card has really bad coil whine, and yeah, that's always been the case with at least mine, and I believe coil whine is one of those issues that Fury cards in general have always dealt with. I'll let you take a little bit of a listen from this card when it was running Heaven Benchmark. So as we jump into a couple games here, I only tested a few for a few different reasons. First off, the performance was actually looking pretty good in general, which tells me if you have one of these cards or maybe you're able to pick one up at a good cost, then if you're looking at 1080p gaming, you're probably going to be in good shape. But the other bigger issue is I was getting some artifacting in Fortnite, which tells me my card may be on the way out. So I didn't really want to run it for hours of benchmarking because I wanted to save anything left in the gas tank for just something that may come on down the road at some later date that I want to test out with it. So at least this way, this card still has maybe just a little bit of life left in it, but let's go ahead and take a look at those few games that I did take a look at. So outside of the artifacting I did see in Fortnite, on the low graphics preset at 1080p, this was a really good experience. The average frame rate was 227, 1% low of 145, and the 0.1% low was 52. And, you know, I can't really say much more. The experience was good. There were a couple of hitches and stutters every once in a while, which is not necessarily uncommon for Fortnite anyways. Now, paired with the Ryzen 5700G as well as 32 gigabytes of DDR4 memory running at 3200 megahertz, any sort of bottleneck was pretty minimal regardless. So the GPU was the thing that was limiting this system's frame rate, at least as far as I can tell. But still, averaging 227 is a really good experience here. And that trend did continue in Overwatch, and fortunately in Overwatch I didn't notice any of that artifacting, so if I'm lucky, the artifacting is just relegated right now to Fortnite, or maybe it's just something that's not playing nice between the driver and Fortnite. Regardless of that, the average in Overwatch was 158, 1% low of 116, and 0.1% low of 85. Really nothing more to say here other than this was a really good experience. And finally, running the Red Dead Redemption 2 benchmark on medium settings at 1080p, the average was 68, 1% low of 55, and 0.1% low of 53. And this game kind of represents a little bit more of a demanding title that you may want to run with this particular GPU. And because we are not only at and above that 60 FPS, but we have a lot of room if we had to drop down settings to get the frame rate up a little bit. So this card is going to be good at 1080p for pretty much everything out there right now. Even a game like Cyberpunk 2077 is probably going to run just fine on this system. You may have to drop settings down into the low range to try to hit that 60 FPS mark, but this card can still run pretty much everything out there and give you at least an acceptable experience, especially when we're talking about single player titles here that aren't particularly fast paced to begin with. So the conclusion with this particular card is sort of a deviating one. If you still have this card and you are happy with the performance, you're not noticing any artifacting like maybe mine has on it, and you're just fine with how it's performing here in 2021, there's really absolutely no reason to get rid of it. But of course, you probably already knew that if you already had this card. And from my experience, if you are a headphone user, the coil wind's really not going to be an issue, so no problem there. If on the other hand, you're looking for a used card to pick up to get you up and running with PC gaming, or maybe you're just putting together a new build, or maybe even upgrading your current rig, I cannot recommend this card, mostly because the lack of ongoing driver support from AMD, as well as the relatively small community of people that actually own this card that could help you troubleshoot if you have any sort of issues with it. It's just really hard to recommend a $300-ish plus card on the used market that's 6 years old and no longer has ongoing driver support. It's probably just not worth picking up, especially because in that price range, there are some newer options that still have ongoing driver support that are at least in the same ballpark performance-wise. But of course, I do want to hear from you guys out there, especially those of you that may own one of these Fury cards, whether it's the air-cooled Fury card, the Fury Nano here, I know R9 Nano, or the actual AMD Fury X, that one with the 120mm AIO built into the card. If you have one of those three cards, let us know in those comments if it is still doing the job for you, or did you upgrade and throw it away, sell it, whatever the case may be. Just let us know all your thoughts on these cards in those comments down below. And of course, if you like the video, give it a like, share, subscribe, comment. All those things are very helpful for the channel. You can follow me both on Instagram and on Twitter at Hoosier Hardware. And as always, I'll let YouTube queue up a couple more videos from my channel for you to watch. I'm Shane with Hoosier Hardware, and I will see you guys in the next video.